Captain Marcus Reed had served the royal family for 23 years. His weathered hands gripped the palace gates as he stared into the morning mist, waiting for his daughter Sarah to return from her evening walk. She always came back by dawn. Always, but today was different. Sarah was 17, their father's sharp green eyes and her mother's gentle smile. She worked as a seamstress in the village, mending clothes for nobles and commoners alike. Everyone loved her kind heart and quick wit. She had a habit of helping lost travelers find their way and feeding stray cats behind the bakery, the palace. Bells chimed 7 times. Sarah should have been home an hour ago. Marcus felt ice in his veins. Daughter never broke her promises. When she said she would be back by dawn, she meant it. Something was terribly wrong. He rushed to Sarah's small room above the seamstress shop. Her bed was untouched. Her favorite blue dress still hung on the wooden peg where she left it yesterday. Her sewing basket sat exactly where it always did, with a half-finished embroidery of tiny yellow flowers. The shop owner, Mrs. Hartwell, wrung her hands nervously. She left around sunset yesterday, she said, her voice shaking. Said she was going to walk by the river like she always does. I thought nothing of it. Oh, Marcus, where could she be? Marcus questioned everyone in the village. The baker had seen Sarah buying bread around 6 in the evening. The fisherman spotted her walking toward the river path. But after that, nothing. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. By noon, Marcus had organized a search party. 20 guards combed through the forest paths, calling Sarah's name until their voices were hoarse. They searched the riverbank, the old mill, even the abandoned cottage where children sometimes played. Nothing. As evening approached, desperation clawed at Marcus's chest. He stood where Sarah was last seen, studying every leaf, every broken twig. That's when he noticed something odd. Near the riverbank, there were signs of a struggle. The soft mud showed footprints, Sarah's small boots, but also larger ones, heavy boots, military boots. And there were marks in the dirt as if something heavy had been dragged. Marcus's blood ran cold. These weren't the boots of common criminals or bandits. These were the boots worn by palace guards, his own men. But why would palace guards take his daughter? What could Sarah possibly have done to attract their attention? She was just a simple seamstress who minded her own business and helped others. Unless she had seen something she shouldn't have. Marcus remembered. It's Tara mentioning strange conversations she'd overheard while delivering mended clothes to the palace. Whispers about secret meetings and late-night visitors. He had dismissed it as palace gossip, but now his heart raced with fear. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He paced his quarters, going over every detail. Sarah was smart and observant. He'd be too observant for her own good. If she had stumbled upon something dangerous, someone might have wanted to silence her. The next morning brought devastating news. A young stable boy came running to Marcus, out of breath and terrified. Captain Reed, the boy gasped, I found something by the old bridge. You need to come quickly. Marcus followed the boy through winding paths to an abandoned stone bridge deep in the forest. There, caught on a thorny bush, was a piece of blue fabric. Sarah's blue fabric from the dress she wore the night she disappeared. But it wasn't just any piece of cloth. It was torn and stained with something dark. Blood. Marcus's knees nearly gave out. His worst fears were becoming reality. His daughter hadn't simply gotten lost or run away. Someone had taken her, and they had hurt her as. He held the fabric in his trembling hands. Marcus made a silent vow. He would find Sarah no matter what it took. He would uncover the truth, even if it meant questioning his own frozen arms. He didn't know yet that his search would lead him to discover a conspiracy so dark and far-reaching that it would shake the very foundations of the kingdom. He didn't know that powerful people had secrets worth killing for. All he knew was that his daughter was missing. Someone was going to pay. The investigation had only just begun. But already Marcus could feel that nothing would ever be the same. The palace he had served faithfully for over 2 decades suddenly felt like enemy territory. Every guard's face seemed suspicious. Every whispered conversation made him wonder, who could he trust when his own daughter's life hung in the balance? Storm clouds gathered overhead. Marcus tucked the blood-stained fabric into his coat pocket. Tomorrow, he would begin asking the dangerous questions that someone clearly didn't want answered. Tomorrow, he would start hunting for the truth, no matter where it led him. Marcus began his investigation carefully. Couldn't let anyone know he suspected the palace guards. If the wrong person found out, both he and Sarah could end up dead. His first stop was Lieutenant James Crawford, his closest friend and second in command. They had fought side by side in 3 wars and saved each other's lives more times than they could count. If Marcus could trust anyone, it was James. They met secretly in the old armory after midnight. James's face turned pale when Marcus showed him the blood-stained fabric. "This doesn't look good, Marcus," James whispered, examining the torn cloth. "But why would any of our men take Sarah? She's never caused trouble for anyone." Marcus had been thinking about this all day. "Remember what Sarah told me last month? About hearing strange conversations while delivering clothes to the nobles' quarters? What if she overheard something she wasn't supposed to?" James nodded slowly. "You think someone wanted to silence her? I think my daughter stumbled onto something big, and now she's paying the price." The 2 men agreed to quietly investigate which guards had been off duty the night Sarah disappeared. They would check the duty rosters and see, if anyone's story didn't add up, what they discovered made. Marcus's blood boiled. 3 guards had requested special leave that evening: Guards Thompson, Baker, and Mills. All 3 claimed family emergencies. All 3 had military boots that matched the prints by the river. And all 3 had returned to duty the next morning acting perfectly normal. Marcus knew these men. Thompson was young and ambitious, always looking for ways to impress the higher-ups. Baker was quiet and followed orders without question. Mills was clever but greedy, always complaining about his low pay. But Marcus needed proof before he could act. He couldn't accuse fellow guards without solid evidence. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Hartwell, the seamstress shop owner, remembered something important. The day before Sarah disappeared, a well-dressed nobleman had visited the shop. He claimed he needed urgent alterations on a ceremonial robe. While Sarah worked, he asked many questions about her family, her daily routines, and her evening walks. "I thought he was just being friendly," Mrs. Hartwell said, wringing her hands. "But now I realized he was studying her, learning her habits." The nobleman had given his name as Lord Ashford, but when Marcus checked the palace records, no such lord existed. Someone had been watching Sarah, learning her patterns, planning her disappearance. Marcus's investigation led him to the palace wine cellar, where servants often gossiped freely. An old kitchen maid named Betty had worked in the palace for 40 years. She knew every secret, every whisper, every shadow. "Strange things have been happening lately," Betty told Marcus in hushed tones. "Late-night meetings in the East Wing, important visitors arriving after midnight. And the Queen's advisor, Lord Blackwood, has been acting very nervous." Lord Blackwood. Marcus knew him well, a smooth-talking politician who had the Queen's ear on all important matters. He was intelligent, charming, and absolutely ruthless. When it came to protecting his own interests— "What kind of meetings?" Marcus pressed. "I don't know exactly, but I've seen foreign ambassadors sneaking in through the servants' entrance. Men in expensive clothes who don't want to be seen, and there's been talk of some kind of treaty, something that would make certain people very rich." Marcus felt the pieces starting to come together. Sarah must have overheard conversations about this secret treaty while delivering clothes to the nobles' quarters. Someone had decided she knew too much. The next evening, Marcus followed Lord Blackwood after the man finished his official duties. The advisor walked quickly through the palace corridors, constantly looking over his shoulder. He led Marcus to a hidden chamber behind the palace library. Marcus pressed his ear to the door and heard voices inside. Lord Blackwood was speaking with someone, but Marcus couldn't make out the words clearly. What he could hear made his heart race. "The girl has been secured," a gruff voice said, "but her father is asking too many questions. He's getting close to the truth. Then perhaps Captain Reed needs to have an accident," Lord Blackwood replied coldly. "We cannot let this treaty fail. Too much money is at stake. What about the girl? She's seen too much. She knows about the secret negotiations with the Northlands. Once the treaty is signed, we'll have to eliminate her permanently. Marcus's world crumbled around him. Not only was Sarah in deadly danger, but now they wanted to kill him too. The conspiracy was bigger than he had imagined. The secret treaty with the Northlands, the kingdom's traditional enemy, would be considered treason by many, but Marcus also felt a surge of hope. Sarah was alive. They were keeping her somewhere, waiting until after this treaty was finalized. He still had time to save her. As he crept away from the hidden chamber, Marcus's mind raced with plans. Couldn't trust the regular chain of command. Lord Blackwood had influence over many palace officials. Marcus needed allies who were completely outside the conspiracy. He thought of old Tom, a retired guard who lived in a cottage near the forest. Tom had trained Marcus when he first joined the guard 20 years ago. He was honest, brave, and owed no favors to anyone in the current administration. Marcus also considered reaching out to Father Benedict at the village church. The priest often helped people in trouble and had connections throughout the kingdom, if anyone could be trusted. To help without asking too many questions, it was the father. But first, Marcus needed to find out more about this secret treaty. What was Lord Blackwood planning with the Northlands? Why was it so important that they would kidnap and murder to protect it? As he returned to his quarters, Marcus noticed he was being followed. Shadow moved between the palace columns, staying just out of sight. His hand moved instinctively to his sword hilt. The conspiracy knew he was getting close to the truth. Time was running out for both him and Sarah. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Tomorrow night, he would break into Lord Blackwood's private chambers and search for evidence of the secret treaty. It was dangerous and could cost him his life, but Sarah's safety was worth any risk. He just prayed he would find her before it was too late. The palace suddenly felt like a prison. Marcus realized he was now fighting not just for his daughter's life, but for the very soul of the kingdom he had sworn to protect. Breaking into Lord Blackwood's chambers required perfect timing and nerves of steel. Marcus waited until the weekly council meeting, when all the high-ranking officials would be busy for hours discussing kingdom business. Lord Blackwood's rooms were on the third floor of the east wing, protected by 2 rotating guards. Marcus knew their schedule by heart. At precisely 11 o'clock, there would be a 10-minute gap when the guards changed shifts. Marcus moved like a shadow through the palace corridors. Years of training had taught him how to walk silently, how to avoid the creaky floorboards, how to become invisible in plain sight. The lock on Blackwood's door was expensive, but not impossible to pick. Marcus's hands worked quickly with the thin metal tools he had borrowed from the palace locksmith. After 3 tense minutes, he heard the satisfying click of the lock opening. Inside, Lord Blackwood's chambers were decorated with expensive paintings and rare books. But Marcus wasn't interested in luxury. He was looking for evidence. The main desk was locked, but Marcus's lock-picking skills served him well again. Inside the drawers, he found exactly what he was looking for. Letters, dozens of them written, in code and bearing the seal of the Northland Empire. Marcus's hands shook as he decoded the messages using skills he had learned during his military training. What he read made his stomach turn. Lord Blackwood was selling kingdom secrets to the enemy, military positions, trade routes, even the location of hidden gold reserves. In exchange, the Northlands were paying him enormous sums of money and promising him a high position when they eventually invaded. But the most shocking discovery was yet to come. Hidden behind a false panel in the desk, Marcus found a detailed map of the palace with all the guard positions marked. There were also plans for something called Operation Crownfall, a plot to assassinate the queen. During next week's harvest festival, Marcus realized the terrible truth. This wasn't just about money or power. Lord Blackwood was planning to help the Northlands conquer the entire kingdom. And Sarah had somehow discovered part of this plan in the bottom drawer. Marcus found something that made his heart stop. A letter in Sarah's own handwriting, addressed to him, but never delivered. Dear Father, it read, I've discovered something terrible happening in the palace. Lord Blackwood is meeting with strange men who speak with foreign accents. They're planning something that will hurt the queen and our people. I'm going to gather more evidence tonight, but if something happens to me, look for the truth in the old mill by Miller's Creek. I love you, Sarah. The old mill. Marcus knew the place well, a crumbling building that had been abandoned for years. Sarah must have hidden evidence there before she was captured. But first, Marcus needed to get out of Blackwood's chambers before the guards returned. He carefully photographed the most important documents with his small camera, then returned everything to its exact position. As he prepared to leave, Marcus heard footsteps in the corridor. Someone was coming back early. Marcus's heart pounded. As he quickly closed the desk drawers and relocked them, the footsteps were getting closer. He had seconds to escape. The chamber had a large window that opened onto the palace gardens. Marcus had climbed down buildings before during his military service, but never with so much at stake. He swung his legs over the windowsill just as he heard a key turning in the door lock. The climb down was treacherous. The old stone walls were slippery from the evening dew, and one wrong move would mean a 3-story fall. But Marcus's desperation gave him strength. He reached the ground just as light appeared in Blackwood's window above. That night, Marcus rode hard to the old mill, by Miller's Creek. The building was dark and seemingly empty, full of broken machinery and rotting wood. But Sarah had been clever, hidden inside an old flour barrel, wrapped in oiled cloth to protect it from moisture. Marcus found Sarah's evidence. She had been collecting information for weeks. Sketches of the foreign visitors, copies of partial documents she had seen while cleaning the nobles' quarters, even a list of guards who seemed to be involved in the conspiracy. The evidence painted a clear picture. Lord Blackwood had been planning this betrayal for months, carefully recruiting corrupt guards and officials. The Harvest Festival assassination was just the beginning. Once the Queen was dead, the Northlands would invade, and Blackwood would rule as their puppet king. But Sarah's most important discovery was a name that shocked Marcus to his core: Sir Edmund Vale, the Queen's most trusted advisor and Marcus's own commanding officer, was listed as Blackwood's main partner in the conspiracy. Marcus felt like the ground was falling away beneath his feet. Sir Edmund had been like a father to him, had recommended him for promotion, had even attended Sarah's 16th birthday celebration. The betrayal cut deeper than any sword. Now Marcus understood why Sarah had been taken. She had evidence that could destroy the most powerful men in the kingdom. But she had also made a fatal mistake. She had tried to gather more proof instead of running to safety. According to her notes, Sarah had planned to confront Sir Edmund directly, believing she could trust him with the evidence. Instead, she had walked straight into a trap. Marcus studied Sarah's careful handwriting by candlelight. His daughter had been so brave, so determined to protect the kingdom. Now, it was his turn to be brave for her. The evidence showed that Sarah was being held somewhere in the old fortress ruins, about 10 miles north of the palace. The place had been abandoned for 50 years. But it was still strong enough to serve as a prison. Marcus made his plans carefully. He couldn't trust anyone in the official guard structure. Sir Edmund and Lord Blackwood had too much influence. But he remembered James, his loyal lieutenant. James had been genuinely shocked about Sarah's disappearance. Marcus decided to take a risk and trust him. The next morning, Marcus approached James with a dangerous proposal. "I know who took Sarah," Marcus said quietly, "but you're not going to like what I have to tell you." When Marcus revealed the full scope of the conspiracy, James's face went white with shock and anger. "Sir Edmund is a traitor?" James whispered. "How is that possible?" "He's served the crown for 30 years. Power and gold can corrupt anyone," Marcus replied bitterly. "But we can't let them know we've discovered the truth. We have to play along until we can rescue Sarah and warn the Queen." The two men began planning a rescue mission that would have to succeed on the first try. If they failed, both Sarah and the Queen would die, and the kingdom would fall to enemy hands. Time was running out. Marcus could feel the weight of the entire kingdom's future on his shoulders. The rescue had to happen at night. Marcus and James spent 2 days studying the old fortress ruins, timing the guards' patrols, and mapping every possible escape route. The fortress sat on a rocky hill, surrounded by thick forest. It had once been a mighty stronghold, but decades of neglect had left it partially crumbling. However, the main tower and dungeon areas were still solid enough to hold prisoners. Marcus counted 6 guards patrolling the perimeter. These weren't palace guards. They were hired mercenaries with scarred faces and cold eyes. Men who would kill without hesitation if paid enough. "How do we get past them?" James whispered as they watched from the tree line. Marcus had a plan, but it was risky. "We don't go past them. We go under them." The old fortress had been built over natural caves. Marcus remembered exploring them as a young guard during training exercises. If the cave entrance was still accessible, they could reach the fortress from below. That night, they found the cave opening hidden behind fallen rocks and twisted vines. The passage was narrow and dark, filled with the sound of dripping water and scurrying rats. Marcus led the way with a small lantern, his heart pounding with each step. The cave tunnels seemed to go on forever. Sometimes they had to crawl on their bellies through tight spaces. Other times they waded through cold, murky water that reached their waists. But Marcus pushed forward, driven by the thought of Sarah trapped somewhere above their heads. After what felt like hours, they found the old grate that led into the fortress basement. The metal was rusty, but still strong. James worked quietly with a small saw while Marcus kept watch. Finally, they were inside. The basement was a maze of storage rooms and forgotten chambers. They moved carefully, listening for any sound that might reveal Sarah's location. Marcus's heart nearly broke when he heard it. Faint voice singing softly somewhere. In the darkness. Sarah's voice. She was singing the lullaby their mother used to sing when Sarah was small. It was barely audible, but Marcus would recognize his daughter's voice anywhere. They followed the sound through winding corridors until they reached a heavy wooden door. Reinforced with iron bands, a guard sat on a stool outside, half asleep with a bottle of wine beside him. James moved like lightning, clamping his hand over the guard's mouth while Marcus struck him unconscious. They dragged him into an empty room and tied him up. The door was locked with an old-fashioned key that hung on the guard's belt. Marcus's hands trembled as he turned it in the lock. Inside the cell, Sarah sat on a pile of straw, her clothes torn and dirty but her spirit unbroken. When she saw her father, tears of relief streamed down her face. "I knew you'd find me," she whispered as Marcus embraced her. But their reunion was cut short. Sarah grabbed her father's arm urgently. "Father, you have to listen to me. The conspiracy is worse than you think. They're not just planning to kill the Queen. They're going to blame it on the Northern rebels and use it as an excuse to start a war. But the war is fake. Lord Blackwood and Sir Edmund are working with the Northland generals. They plan to lose the war on purpose so the Northlands can take over our kingdom." Marcus felt sick. It was a perfect plan. Create a crisis, point the blame at enemies, then profit from the chaos that followed. "There's more," Sarah continued. "I overheard them talking about other kingdoms too. This isn't just about us. They're planning to do the same thing in 3 other countries. It's a massive conspiracy involving multiple nations." The scope of the betrayal was staggering. This wasn't just treason. It was an international plot that could reshape the entire continent. "We have to warn the Queen immediately," James said. But Sarah shook her head. "We can't trust anyone in the palace. Even some of the Queen's personal guards are involved. I heard Sir Edmund say they have people everywhere." As they prepared to escape, Marcus heard something that made his blood freeze. Footsteps, many footsteps, coming down the corridor toward them. "They know we're here," he whispered, through the narrow window of Sarah's cell. Marcus could see torches moving through the forest below. More guards were surrounding the fortress. Someone had discovered their rescue attempt. "There's another way out," Sarah said quickly. "I don't know, I found it. There's a loose stone in the back wall that leads to an old drainage tunnel. It's narrow, but we can fit through." Sarah led them to what looked like a solid stone wall. But when she pressed on a particular block, it shifted inward, revealing a dark opening, just big enough for a person to crawl through. The drainage tunnel was even worse than the cave they had used to enter. It was filled with stagnant water and debris from decades of neglect. But it was their only chance. They crawled through the suffocating darkness while the sounds of searching guards echoed behind them. Marcus could hear angry voices and dogs barking. The hunters had become the hunted. The tunnel seemed endless, but finally they saw moonlight ahead. They emerged into a thick patch of brambles half a mile from the fortress, scratched and exhausted but alive. As they caught their breath, Marcus realized their escape was only the beginning of their problems. Lord Blackwood and Sir Edmund now knew that their conspiracy had been discovered. They would accelerate their plans and probably move the assassination up to prevent any interference. "We have 3 days until the harvest festival," Marcus said grimly. 3 days to stop them from killing the queen and destroying our kingdom. Sarah looked at her father with determination in her eyes. "Then we better get started." But as they prepared to leave their hiding place, Marcus heard the sound he had been dreading. Horse hooves, coming fast through the forest. Their escape had been discovered. The chase was about to begin, and Marcus knew that this time there would be nowhere left to hide. The horses were getting closer. Marcus could hear at least 6 riders crashing through the forest, following their trail with the help of tracking dogs. "This way," Sarah whispered, leading them deeper into the thick woods where horses couldn't follow easily. They ran through thorny underbrush and jumped over fallen logs, their lungs burning from the effort. Behind them, angry voices shouted orders and dogs barked furiously. Marcus knew these forests well from his military training. But Sarah surprised him by knowing secret paths he had never seen. She led them to a hidden cave behind a waterfall, where the sound of rushing water would mask their scent from the dogs. They huddled in the cold, damp cave as their pursuers searched nearby. Torchlight flickered outside, and Marcus heard Sir Edmund's voice giving orders. "Find them," Sir Edmund commanded. "They cannot be allowed to reach the queen. Kill the guards if necessary, but bring me the girl alive. You may need her to send a message to anyone else who thinks about interfering." The hatred in his former commander's voice made Marcus sick. This man had once been his hero, someone he looked up to and respected. Now Sir Edmund was willing to murder innocent people to protect his treasonous scheme, after what felt like hours. The searchers moved on. Marcus, James, and Sarah emerged from their hiding place, soaked and shivering but alive. "We need help," Marcus said. "We can't fight this conspiracy alone." Sarah had an idea. "What about Captain Rodriguez from the Harbor Guard? He's not part of the palace structure, and he's honest. I've mended uniforms for his men, and they always speak well of him." Captain Rodriguez commanded the guards who protected the kingdom's main port. He was known for his integrity and his loyalty to the common people. If anyone would help them expose the conspiracy, it would be him. The journey to the harbor took them through dangerous territory. They had to avoid main roads where Sir Edmund's men might be watching. Instead, they traveled through farmers' fields and forest paths, moving only at night and hiding during the day. On the second night, they reached the harbor district. The salty air and sound of ships in the harbor felt like freedom. After the oppressive atmosphere of the palace, Captain Rodriguez was a stern man with graying hair and scars from many battles. When Marcus showed him Sarah's evidence and the documents they had copied from Lord Blackwood's chambers, his face grew dark with anger. "Treason," Rodriguez said simply, "and not just against our queen, but against every honest person in this kingdom." Rodriguez immediately offered his full support. "My men are loyal to the crown, not to corrupt politicians. We'll help you save the queen and stop this invasion." But they faced a seemingly impossible challenge. The harvest festival was tomorrow night. The queen would be surrounded by her usual guards, many of whom were part of the conspiracy. Could they warn her without being killed on the spot? Sarah came up with a brilliant plan. "The queen always wears her grandmother's sapphire necklace during public ceremonies," Sarah said. "But last week, she brought it to our shop for cleaning. Mrs. Hartwell still has it. I can get to the necklace and hide a warning message inside. The clasp. The queen will find it when she puts it on." It was risky, but it might work. The queen was intelligent and would understand that a hidden message meant serious danger. While Sarah worked on preparing the warning message, Marcus and Captain Rodriguez planned their strategy for the festival. They would position harbor guards throughout the crowd, disguised as common citizens. If the assassination attempt happened, they would be ready to protect the queen. But Lord Blackwood was also preparing his final moves, unknown to Marcus. Where Sir Edmund had figured out where they were hiding. Spies had reported the meeting with Captain Rodriguez, and now the conspirators knew they were running out of time. "We move the assassination to tomorrow afternoon," Lord Blackwood told his co-conspirators during an emergency meeting. "During the Queen's visit to the orphanage. There will be fewer guards, and we can blame it on angry citizens upset about taxes." The plan was changing, and Marcus didn't know it. Meanwhile, Sarah successfully delivered the modified necklace to the palace through Mrs. Hartwell, who often brought jewelry repairs directly to the Queen's chambers. The old seamstress was nervous, but determined to help save both Sarah and the kingdom. The message hidden in the necklace clasp was brief but clear. "Your Majesty, Lord Blackwood and Sir Edmund plan to kill you. Trust Captain Rodriguez at the harbor. Your life is in immediate danger. This message comes from loyal subjects who would die to protect you." As the sun set on the eve of the harvest festival, Marcus felt the weight of the kingdom's fate pressing down on him. Everything depended on whether the Queen would find and believe their warning message. But across town, Lord Blackwood was putting his backup plan into motion. If they couldn't kill the Queen at the festival, they would take a more direct approach. A small team of assassins was already moving toward the palace, and this time they wouldn't wait for a public ceremony. The Queen would die tonight, and by morning, the kingdom would be at war with an enemy that was actually its secret ally. Marcus had saved his daughter, but he still might lose everything else he had spent his life protecting. The final confrontation was about to begin, and Marcus realized that even if they succeeded in warning the Queen, the battle for the kingdom's survival was far from over. Dark forces had been set in motion. Stopping them would require courage, sacrifice, and perhaps a miracle. The Queen found the message just as she was preparing for the evening's royal dinner. Her lady-in-waiting had fastened the sapphire necklace around her neck when the Queen felt something unusual in the clasp. Queen Isabella was no fool. She had ruled for 15 years and survived 3 assassination attempts. When she read the tiny scroll hidden in her necklace, she immediately understood the gravity of the situation. Instead of panicking, she acted with the wisdom that had kept her alive and on the throne for so long. She quietly dismissed her servants and sent for Captain Rodriguez using a secret message system known only to her most trusted allies. Meanwhile, Marcus was racing against time to reach the palace. Sarah's evidence had revealed that the assassination would happen tonight, not tomorrow as originally planned. Lord Blackwood had accelerated his timeline as Marcus and his small team approached the palace gates. They saw something that confirmed their worst fears. The normal guards had been replaced with men Marcus didn't recognize, mercenaries loyal to the conspiracy. "We're too late," James whispered. "They've already taken control." But Marcus noticed something the conspirators had overlooked: the servants. Entrance near the kitchen was still guarded by old Peter, a loyal guard who had served 3 monarchs. Peter was honest to his bones and too set in his ways to be corrupted. Marcus approached Peter carefully. "Old friend, the Queen is in terrible danger. Usher. Edmund and Lord Blackwood are planning to kill her tonight." Peter's weathered face showed shock, then determination. "I knew something felt wrong. Too many new faces around here lately." "You need me to do?" Within the palace, Queen Isabella was playing a dangerous game. She had to act normally while secretly preparing for the attack she knew was coming. She attended the royal dinner as if nothing was wrong, smiling at Lord Blackwood and Sir Edmund, while knowing they planned to murder her. But the Queen had made her own preparations. Captain Rodriguez had quietly stationed harbor guards throughout the palace, disguised as servants and minor officials. The Queen had also sent secret messages to loyal nobles in other kingdoms, ensuring that even if she died, the truth about the conspiracy would be revealed. The assassination attempt came. During the dessert course, Sir Edmund stood up to propose a toast to the Queen's health, his hand resting on his sword hilt. This was the signal for the attack to begin, but as he drew his weapon, Captain Rodriguez and his men emerged from their hiding places. The dining hall erupted into chaos as loyal guards fought against traitors. Marcus burst through the servants' entrance with James and his rescue team fighting their way through corridors filled with clashing swords and shouting men. Lord Blackwood tried to escape through a secret passage, but Sarah was waiting for him. She had snuck into the palace through the same cave system Marcus had used earlier, determined to see justice done. "You killed innocent people for money," Sarah said, blocking Blackwood's escape route with a crossbow she had taken from a fallen guard. Blackwood sneered at her. "You're just a seamstress. You understand nothing about power or politics." "I understand right from wrong," Sarah replied calmly. "And I understand that you're going to face justice for what you've done." For the palace raged for hours. Sir Edmund fought with the desperation of a man who knew he faced execution for treason. But Marcus was fighting for something more powerful than personal gain. He was fighting for his daughter, his queen, and his kingdom's freedom. When Marcus finally cornered Sir Edmund in the throne room, his former commander tried one last desperate trick. "You don't understand, Marcus," Sir Edmund gasped, his sword trembling in his hands. "The kingdom is bankrupt. The Northlands offered us a way to save our people from starvation. This treaty would have brought peace and prosperity. By selling our freedom," Marcus replied, his own blade steady and sure. "By murdering our queen. By betraying everything we swore to protect." Their final duel was fierce but brief. Marcus's righteous anger gave him strength, while Sir Edmund's guilt made him weak. When it was over, Sir Edmund lay defeated, and the conspiracy's military leader was finished. Lord Blackwood's capture by Sarah had cut off the political head of the operation. With both leaders in custody, the remaining conspirators quickly surrendered. In the days that followed, the full scope of the treachery was revealed. The investigation uncovered a network of corruption that stretched across multiple kingdoms. Foreign gold had bought the loyalty of dozens of officials, all working toward the same goal: the conquest of the free nations of the continent. Queen Isabella rewarded Marcus's loyalty by promoting him to Chief of Royal Security. But more importantly to Marcus, she pardoned Sarah for any danger her investigation had caused and praised her courage in uncovering the truth. "Your daughter saved not just my life, but the independence of our entire kingdom," the queen told Marcus during a private ceremony. "She will always have a place of honor in our court." Sarah chose to remain a seamstress, but now she worked exclusively for the palace, creating beautiful garments while keeping her ears open for any whispers of future conspiracies. Her experience had taught her that ordinary citizens could be the kingdom's best defense against corruption. The captured conspirators faced trial for treason. Lord Blackwood and the surviving plotters were executed, their property seized and distributed to the families of guards who had died fighting the conspiracy. The Northland ambassadors involved in the plot were expelled from the kingdom, and their government was forced to pay massive compensation to avoid war. The threat of invasion had been permanently removed. Captain Rodriguez was honored for his crucial role in saving the kingdom and became one of the Queen's most trusted advisors. The harbor guard was expanded and given new responsibilities for protecting the realm against future foreign interference. But perhaps the most important outcome was the reform of the palace guard system. New oversight procedures were established to prevent corruption, and regular loyalty assessments ensured that no future conspiracy could take root so deeply. Marcus often reflected on how close they had come to disaster. If Sarah hadn't been brave enough to investigate the strange conversations she overheard, she hadn't left evidence for him to find. If any one of a dozen things had gone differently, the kingdom would have fallen. Years later, when Marcus was an old man, he would tell the story to his grandchildren, Sarah's children, about how a seamstress's courage and a father's love had saved an entire kingdom from destruction. The conspiracy had reached the highest levels of power, but it had been defeated by the loyalty and determination of ordinary people who refused to let evil triumph. Sarah never forgot the lesson she learned during those terrifying days, that the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and that sometimes the most important battles are fought not by armies, but by individuals who choose to stand up for what is right. The kingdom prospered under Queen Isabella's continued rule, stronger and more secure because its people had learned that they could not take their freedom for granted. And in the palace, a simple blue dress hung in a place of honor, a reminder that heroes come in all forms, and that courage often wears the most humble disguises.